Welcome. Today, we're going to break down a really crucial part of the Indian Constitution, one that honestly stumps a lot of people, the fundamental duties. Okay, let me ask you something straight up. Can you, right now, name all 11 fundamental duties of an Indian citizen? Yeah, it's tougher than it sounds, isn't it? Most of us can probably get a couple, but all 11? It's a bit of a stretch. But hey, don't you worry, because there's a simple trick, a proper decode actually, to remember every single one. And we're going to crack it together today. And here it is. This is a brilliant little mnemonic that connects each duty to a letter of the alphabet, all the way from A to K. It makes them almost impossible to forget. So you ready to see how this whole thing works? Let's start with the first three. Simple. A is for anthem, respecting our national symbols. B is for Bapu, Mahatma Gandhi, which is a great way to remember that we need to cherish the noble ideals from our freedom struggle. And C is for center, reminding us that it's our duty to uphold and protect India's sovereignty, unity, and integrity. See? Pretty straightforward so far, right? All right, let's keep this momentum going. Next up, we've got D, which stands for defense, the duty to defend the country and be ready for national service if you're ever called upon. E is for equality, and this is all about promoting harmony and that spirit of common brotherhood among all of us. And F is for our magnificent forts, which is a perfect way to remember our duty to value and preserve our rich composite culture and heritage. And now let's bring it home with the final set of letters. G is for greenery, a simple reminder to protect our natural environment. H stands for humanism and for developing a scientific temper. For I, just think of the phrase, I will shun violence. That helps you remember the duty to safeguard public property. J is for Ji Johnson Mehena, which means to work with all your heart, pointing to our duty to strive for excellence in everything we do. And finally, K is for knowledge, the duty of every parent or guardian to give their children educational opportunities. And just like that, you've got all 11. So you've got the trick down now, which is great. But have you ever wondered about the backstory? I mean, these duties, they weren't part of the original Constitution at all. Their origin story is actually pretty dramatic and tied to one of the most controversial times in modern Indian history.
So this is where the story gets really interesting. Look at the timing, 1976. This is smack in the middle of the internal emergency. The Swaran Singh Committee was set up, they made their recommendations, and boom, the 42nd Amendment adds 10 fundamental duties. And you know where the inspiration came from? The Constitution of the former USSR. The first 10 came in one go, and then that 11th one, the one about education, that was added much later, in 2002.
Okay, here's a key term you absolutely need to know, non-justiciable. It sounds a bit complicated, I know, but it simply means you can't be dragged to court for failing to do a fundamental duty. This is a really crucial distinction. You could almost think of it as the terms and conditions part of our duties. And this brings us to a really core difference between our rights and our duties. Our fundamental rights, which you'll find in Part 3 of the Constitution, are justiciable. That means you can absolutely go to court to enforce them. But our duties, over in Part 4A, they are non-justiciable. It's also super important to remember that duties apply only to Indian citizens, whereas some rights actually extend to foreigners who are living in India as well.
So this is the big question, isn't it? If they aren't enforceable in court, if you can't get into legal trouble for ignoring them, do they even matter? Are they just a list of well-meaning suggestions? Do they have any real teeth? While the answer is a definite yes, they do matter. And here's how it works. While you can't take someone to court over a duty, Parliament can. Parliament has the power to pass specific laws to give these duties some very real teeth. You should think of them as a guiding principle for the government whenever they're creating new laws. And in 1999, the Verma Committee actually did the homework for us by connecting the dots. It identified existing laws that were already putting these duties into practice. For example, that duty to respect the national flag. It's backed up by the Prevention of Insults to National Honor Act. This shows exactly how the duties written on the page are connected to the actual laws on the street. And look, this isn't just some political idea. Even the Supreme Court has weighed in on this. They've stated very clearly that our duties aren't just decorative. They are just as important as our rights. The courts actually use them to interpret other laws and to figure out if a law is constitutional or not. But, okay, let's be real, it's not a perfect system, right? And it has its fair share of criticism. Some people argue that because you can't take anyone to court over them, they're nothing more than a code of moral precepts, just a nice-to-have list. Then there's the language itself. It's a bit vague, isn't it? What does noble ideals or scientific temper really mean in everyday life? And maybe the biggest complaint of all, how come super important duties like, say, voting or paying your taxes, how come they're not on the list at all? And speaking of that point, it's really interesting to note that the original Swaran Singh Committee did in fact recommend including the duty to pay taxes, but it was rejected by the government back then, most likely because they thought it was just too politically controversial to make it a constitutional duty. So let's just bring it all together, shall we? There are 11 duties. They act as a moral compass for all of us, a constant reminder of what we owe to our nation. They're a tool for interpreting laws, and they're meant to promote responsible citizenship. And now you know a really simple trick to remember every single one of them. At the end of the day, these 11 duties are the other side of the coin to our rights. They remind us that for all the freedoms we enjoy, there's a debt we owe to the nation that protects them. So I'll just leave you with this final thought. In this constant conversation between what we demand from our country and what our country demands from us, do you think we've struck the right balance?